The first one is, what are your thoughts on the reliability of chatbots? That's a question, isn't it? Who wants to? I'll let people choose. So who wants to take that, and who wants to go first? Dirk, you're excited in the chair. I can see it. Do you want to take that one?
Yeah, so I mean, it depends on what reliability means, right? I guess it is about how relevant the answer is. The technical answer to this question is, it is as good as you train your AI algorithms, which goes down to how good is your training database, which, yeah, this is absolutely crucial. The larger the semantic scope of your chatbot is. So if you have something like a chatbot which is talking about weather, yeah, then I would say this is a very limited semantics, and you need not that much data. Yeah? And the broader it is, and I would expect this actually grows exponentially, the more data you need to train your algorithm. So the data is actually is fueling the quality and the reliability of your chatbot.
I think at the end of the day, organizations just need to look at their chatbots like another agent. You have to train it, you have to nurture it, it has to evolve, it has to grow. And the only way that it does that is through exposure to the right information, to the right best practices. And that's the absolute key to it. Most organizations are evolving in their journey with chatbots. It starts off probably not being that accurate, that reliable, because maybe they just don't know what customers are looking for, what language they use. We see that a lot, where what you started off with thinking it was going to look like actually changes once you put it out to a few customers. So I think it's got to be one of those things that's an evolution. The technology is fantastic, the technology is great, but it's adopting that into your business process.
So it's a progressive journey, and certainly we've seen this with the deployment that we did for Stockport Council. So starting in a particular area, building up momentum. Also, it's the insights that they're able to get around the journey on the website, the online journey, that help them to refine the content that we're providing online to help drive further self-service improvements as well.
Yeah, and I also think, the point about them being, they have been deployed very much in silos up until now. It has been one-dimensional. And the challenge now for organizations is, how do you take that broader? How do you bring that seamless customer journey, the end-to-end customer journey across your chatbots as well, so that your chatbots are not just stopping and handing off because they don't know where to go next. And that is one of the issues today. So, it's about making sure that they become more multifaceted, more multidimensional as you grow and as you expand them out across different parts of the customer journey.
I think it's also about how the chatbot is deployed and some of the rules that you're using for the chatbot. I think we've all had experiences where you've used a chatbot and the conversation is just so convoluted at the end, you can't even remember what you asked the chatbot for in the first question. So I think it's how it's deployed, where the right actions and anchors are for other people to step in. But if you've got that link to how agents then support that use case afterwards, then that is how the chatbot needs to learn. Absolutely. Is actually how people solve it later on.
So again, maybe that point of don't start too big, right? Start
for
at
sure.
small steps,
Yeah, for sure.
prove it,
and test.
Test.
Don't be afraid to test it.
Yeah.
I think everybody looks at it and says, "This is everybody has. I need to have this technology," and it can be used in so many different ways. I mean, there's conversations around when does the chatbot become live on the website? Is it 5 seconds? Is it 2 seconds? Whatever it may be, and it's going to be a different answer. But you cannot be afraid. I think we live in a completely different environment where maybe in years past we were afraid to test because somebody would have an opinion. That's nuts. You have to test. You have to test environments and different scenarios.
We're quite lucky. For some organisations we work with, we've actually started at social, and that gives us loads of data. That gives us more data than a contact centre can imagine. We've done stuff for organisations where there's been 20,000 tweets a minute, just because lots of people like One Direction. Graham, was it you who liked One Direction? No, you didn't like all the analytics on that. But very much so, we could then turn that into representative data to be able to create Facebook Messenger automation. So actually, we've got some of that data to start reacting on, but it is about the data.
And I think we also shouldn't underestimate the role of AI and bots. It's not just about customer interaction. You know, importantly, it's that augmentation of information to support the staff undertaking their interaction with customers. I think for me that's probably one of the big growth areas and big opportunities. If people are worried about deploying onto a live website, you know, that thing of test and not impacting the customer experience, that's a great place to start, is to actually use it internally to serve up the right information to the staff in support of their customer interactions. And it's a good way of actually learning and using data to start to refine and work out how you expose to customers as well.
Yeah, Jonathan, you the comment you made was interesting, listening to Liverpool as they were trying to figure out, you know, it wasn't necessarily coming from the customer, the need for the use of different technology and whatever contact they were having with the club. It was coming from the agents. And some of that was just born out of frustration, which was, I can't answer a simple query on the history of the fan or the buying, or never mind getting into a world of predictability on what potentially could happen. So I couldn't agree more. I think it's really, really important to, and Natalie, you talked about this, to listen to the experience of the frontline person, which is, in a lot of cases, is the agent, be it through chat or be it through social, or be it through, you know, God forbid, a phone call. But listening to them will give you so many more answers than just listening to the customer view.
Yeah. And we've certainly found it within the contact center environment, the number of applications that people need to use to fulfill customer inquiries and do their job, right? So I think the average is between 6 and 7. So, you know, that thing of, I like the comment there, you know, the computer is running slow, the application is running slow, but actually there's a fair chance it's moving from one app to another. So, you know, if that's a problem, how do we overcome it? Any views on that?
Well, I think that's where your AI comes in as well, because you've got to be able to use this stuff to augment what the employee is doing, not necessarily replace the key things that AI won't be able to do for some foreseeable future. And just doing something simple, like, first of all, using AI to figure out who is the best resource to hand this over to. And it may not even be someone in the contact center, because maybe they don't have the information and maybe they would have to look across 7 or 8 screens to get it, whereas somebody else might be able to answer it straight away. So it's really powerful in that decision making as to who to send it to. It's then really powerful in bringing them up to speed very quickly. You know, being able to pinpoint and hone in on the things that really matter in this conversation and surface that up to the agent really quickly, bring in knowledge from somewhere else as well to say, actually, this might help you in addressing this. But then very importantly, supporting the agent throughout that interaction by continuing to give recommendations and suggestions and bringing information to the fore. But very importantly, and this is the bit that I think is most critical, is when they need support, when, you know, sentiments are running high and they need somebody quickly. How many times in a contact center do you see an agent trying to get alert their supervisor from across a busy room? Too late then, too late. So AI is incredibly powerful at being able to help understand those situations and then figure out next best action. What do I need to do here? And learn from that. So knowing when the conversation starts to go there, I'll bring them in quicker next time, or I'll hand it over there, or I'll support it with that. That's valuable. And then you start to get over some of those things of my system's running slow, because agents the big thing is really, you shouldn't expect your people who are serving customers to go to find information. Information, applications, resources need to find them. That's the key thing, really. And so you start to overcome those problems then of my system's running slow, because the information's just there. What they need is there. They have the support there.
So going back to the comment, empower, don't hinder. So empower people to do their job and actually provide a seamless experience to customers. Don't hinder them with too much tech, right? Don't make it complicated for people.
Yeah, and spend time in your workflows.
Yeah.
I think the greatest focus we're being asked to dig into is not, it may not necessarily, okay, so the definition, everybody talk about IoT and they'll talk about AI and they'll talk about MI, but the real concentration is on the flow of information. So, you know, everybody will tell the story about the alert that comes from the fridge is empty, but unless the alert actually ends in a place that there's a decision and an action, it's a complete waste of time. So more and more, either working with yourselves or working with customers, we're getting forced into a conversation around the enablement of intelligence, the delivery of communication to a person at a particular point in time, but really focusing then on the interaction with the individual so they can do something. And that workflow piece, which in a lot of cases is automated in itself, in almost every case, is where we're really, really seeing a lot of integration effort, a lot of research and development effort, and I think you're going to see a heavy emphasis on that.
I agree. Alex, Dirk, anything to add to that?
No, I think we sort of covered it with a lot of the AI and decision making. I think there'll be lots more tools and where decision making is opened up to agents in real time. So, you know, this customer, the last customer that called about, you know, in a similar state of unhappiness, we, you know, got, you know, a positive outcome came because we did these following actions. So it's almost the inferencing of what that customer expectation was given. So real-time responsiveness without necessarily having to put your hand up and shout for support on the floor.
Okay. So next question then is, what advice would you give to overcome a cultural barrier and where there's a perception of too much change?
Too much change. I think there's obviously transformation fatigue, I would say, in lots of organisations, especially of bigger organisations, where they think, oh, not another change programme, not another change programme. And I think the sort of change we're talking about isn't a big transformation programme. This is about a new culture that says we're going to do some more exciting things and people want to be involved. And I think and that is different to we're going to update our massive great ERP system and someone's going to have to go and do this, that and all the rest of it, and you're trying to get, you know, some of the negative viewpoints on board and all the rest of it. I think this is a different type of change that we're talking about now.
I really think it's about incentivize change or responsiveness. Yeah. Then you have the whole thing about to welcome failure, because change behavior is often goes together with failing attempts, which is quite interesting, or quite important. So you need to provide these this open and you need to make people comfortable, right? Because you are pulling people out of the comfort zone, so you need to kind of pamper them.
I mean, typically change, the real people, these big transformation programs, the real people you need to be on that program are very difficult to release from their day-to-day business activities and duties to be on that program. And this is one of the reasons why some of these big programs do fail anyway. So I think actually if you start in a small way and you start empowering people, that doesn't become a problem.
I think at the end of the day, you've got to put the change in the hands of the people who are going to benefit from it. And one of the best ways to do that is to let them identify what those changes should be. We've got an organisation in the Netherlands, they're an outsourcer, and their customer services teams obviously see every type of customer interaction across multiple industries, multiple organisations. And they actually pulled their agents and said, okay, tell us what would make a difference in your life. Now here's some developers, go and sit in a room. We'll put some pizza under the door every so many hours, but go and figure out how to solve this. And they did. And within a few days, they came back with some use cases that they'd enabled. And for them, those agents were 100% bought in because they had designed it based on their experience. They had helped in develop it, and they were then helping with the deployment because it was going to make their life easy. And they've now rolled some of those changes out across the business. So I think it's very much about trying to make it small, manageable, but really make a difference to the people that are going to be using it.
And I think some of these later new frameworks like design thinking and 5-day sprints, that's exactly how we work.
It's
and
enabled this way
when
of
you've got,
working.
you're working with a housing association recently, they wanted to know, where is my engineer? And when you can put that together very quickly in 5 days and they can see that happen, it changes. That isn't change. That is, wow.
Yeah.
It's not the same sort of change, oh God, we're going for another 3 months, where the outputs are huge, PowerPoint artifacts. What we're talking about is change where you can actually physically see it and the customers can experience it and give you that real-time feedback.
So it's very much that point of if you want to know where the real problems are, ask the people who experience them and then actually get them to be part of the solution.
Yeah.
Get them involved, get them working to actually see the end benefit of that change.
The benefit word is important, but I'd also, there's so many use cases. We tend to talk about the impact of change in organizations that aren't necessarily made for change, but there's companies that start every single day of the week which think completely and utterly differently, which is change is their motto.
Yeah.
And they live in a world of automation and software and don't even think the way that like the public sector might think in terms of, okay, the benefit of change might tell me where the engineer is. These smaller startup companies are thinking, I can spin up a business in 5 minutes, I can sell that as a service. The whole SaaS model comes into it. And it's just a completely and utterly different way of thinking. So I think there are times where we need to be very conscious of the audience in the company that we're working with and that culture and the individual and the demographics, but also acknowledge that there may be pieces of it that because of our own ingrained, what we feel are wrong because we're not that demographic, and the individual who's working in that software company, they're thinking in hours and minutes and days, and they're thinking about spinning up services. How can they create revenue? It's just an utterly different mindset. They don't look at it as change, they look at it as opportunity.
It's just every day. Yeah. It's a day in the office, yeah.
And of course, not everyone has to be a champion of change, right?
No, but you need the leaders.
You do
change.
need, yeah.
Change requires leaders,
Yeah.
and the point with leaders is you can't appoint leaders. Leaders are becoming leaders because they have followers. Yeah? And why people are following other people? The only reason is because they think they bring them to a better life. Yeah. So I mean, this is what leadership is about, and you need leadership for facilitating change.
Okay, interesting. Next question. So what technologies do the panel think we are best equipped for right now and should be accelerating, and what might be the barriers to the use of technologies such as AI, VR, and IoT? So there's quite a few parts to that question, right?
Yeah.
I really think analytics is one of the biggest ones, because without information, and it's not the information, it's the actionable insights that come off the information, you really don't know where to direct your focus because things are changing so fast. So for me, the biggest thing right now is analytics. Analytics will then tell you where you need to go and put in the automation, put in the artificial intelligence, and put in the workflows, etc. But first of all, it's about being able to manage that operation and being able to see how it moves in real time and being able to respond to that and being able to learn from it. So I think all these things are great, and there's no doubt the technology, all the technologies we've talked about today are ready. Their readiness is not the issue. It's how do you consume them as an organization? Where do you put them into the right places? And so for that reason, I would say analytics will give you that insight.
So let data show the way. Yeah.
Data will definitely show the way. I think that we also, sometimes it's hard because you live in a world today where you interact with a device, whatever it may be. I don't think we can comprehend what that will be in 18 months or 24 months, because it changes based on the data, the accessibility to data, how that's served up, the action that it's creating. And there will be companies that either exist today or don't exist today that will fundamentally redefine one of the most important things, which is the user experience with the data. And that's not just the GUI, it's the physical, emotive experience that you have with the device. I mean, which one of us today could live without the device, whether we like it or not? And everything in your life and your data is there. So I also think that it's easy to get into the, what will happen in 15 years, because nobody will ever prove you right or wrong. But I do think it's definitely worth thinking through, the back office, the data piece, but don't forget we don't know what we don't know in terms of the interaction with the device and how that is fundamentally going to change, whether that's the embedded experience into the person, whether that's the embedded, device. All of that will become immersive, will give us access to data sources that we've never even thought about today. I think it's fascinating to look at the world of, again, sports and science, to see the embeddedness of whether they're chips into the athletes now, and the on-the-minute performance analysis of the blood, the performance level, how that's served up. And again, that's a use case that has been completely and utterly redefined. It used to be a syringe to take the analysis to, that is being served up in a time frame that's very difficult to comprehend. But
So no one can truly accurately predict the future. So the important thing is we know that change happens, it continues to happen, and it happens at a greater pace. So what's important is to be able to accommodate change, to be able to react and address the opportunities and challenges that are presented. So if that's the case, if we don't know what the future is, we might have some pretty good insights as to the future direction, but how do we create an environment where we can adapt to change and the future without going down these cul-de-sacs? Anyone got any views on that? That's a tough one, isn't it? That wasn't even written down. I've just asked. I asked.
Yes, that's a really difficult one. I know Dirk's got a very strong view on this.
Okay. Dirk, well done.
I think technical cul-de-sacs. I think generally adoption to some of these technologies, we're talking about things here that some people might be quite worried about. There's lots of use cases for things like AI that have been around for a very long time. I mean, you spoke about, I think, autopilot on planes and stuff like that is AI or a form of it. Yeah. No different to sat-nav. It is a form of some sort of artificial intelligence. And likewise, I think it comes down to the adoption and where it fits and where it's going to be used in the future. I just think now, because of the power of things like mobile, realistically, a lot of this change has happened because of the mobile device, has empowered users to such an extent they have got more power in their hands than your contact center has. They can find out more information very, very quickly, and your contact center can. So, they might come back and want to do a return. They might tell you it doesn't fit, but is it because it doesn't fit, or is it because they just found it somewhere cheaper? There's lots of this going on, and I think where things will go will be very much pushed on analytics and trying to drive some of that information to try and put some of that power back into organisations' hands. Because AI is not old. I mean, we were talking about this the other night as well. Was it Turing? I don't know. He did chess. Turing 50 or something in 1962. Did you tell me? I can't remember. Something like I was listening, I promise. But these things have been around for a long time. It's how they're being used now and the adoption of it, and they're readily access to things that Microsoft, Google have exposed now. You can use TensorFlow now to create all sorts of different immersive experiences with AI and all sorts of different things.
If you have the training data.
If you have the training.
So is technology of today making it easier, or is it people are more willing to make this change or being forced into making a change?
I think technology is always an enabler, right? If you start from the question, what can I do with this piece of technology? I think it's wrong. You got it from the stick from the wrong end, right? It's always, what is your problem? What problem do I want to solve, and what are the technologies that help me to do it, right? Because from this lean kind of thinking, technology for the sake of technology is waste.
I mean, I think for me, it's really got to be intuitive. It's just got to be easy. It's got to be seamless. It's just got to happen. none of us thought our lives would be dictated by phones, but the reason they are is because it's easy, it's intuitive, it just gives us access to everything we need, and it's not difficult to get it. So whenever you're trying to get change to stick, you've got to find the stuff that's just going to make people's lives easy, because if it doesn't, it's not going to be adopted as much as you want it to be.
So another question, do you think there's a talent and skills shortage to help to really deploy new digital technologies and help organizations to see the real benefit?
There definitely is. But again, I think it's easy to make the statement that there's a deficit in skills. There's probably always been deficits in skills as technology continues to evolve, and that will continue. I do think, though, that going back to the demographics is the mindset of the college graduate coming into the workforce is a completely different mindset. And that's a benefit over time, because they will think in terms of engineering or development in a different way than certainly somebody of my generation would think. And that's quite compelling. But that opens up a complete question around, should we be really driving education? How do we support research and development? What is the government's role in terms of driving that? The initiatives here in the UK or in Ireland around STEM are incredibly, incredibly important. So is there a gap? There's always a gap. There definitely is today, but I would be quite hopeful that as that demographic comes through, they will think things in a different way.
I think it's a little bit different. I think there's a gap in some areas, but when it comes to deploying the technologies, I actually think we've got the skills, we're just not tapping into them. So I really do think we still, for most organizations, run any IT type of project as something that is going to be done by a team to the rest of the organization. And actually, that's not what it should be. So for me, change, and all change these days involves technology. That's the long and short of it. But for me, we need to be tapping into the organization to find the people with the use cases, with the ideas around how to apply this, with the ideas around how to innovate what they do day in, day out. So I think it's about using people differently and tapping into, as opposed to going out and, nothing against consultants at all, but at all, very important, but rather than just spending money, bringing consultants in to work with a small part of your business, actually make your whole business consultants and find a way to be able to channel all those ideas. As Dave said, the way that people think these days, the graduates coming out of university, they think completely differently. If you've got a graduate program in your organization, ask yourself, are you actually tapping into that? Are you using that to define the customer journeys, the experiences, etc.? So yeah, I think it's about using skills you've got.
I think the resources will change as well. I think even the developers and technologists that you're going to need in the future will be different to what we have now. We try to, for example, abolish silos wherever they are in our organisation, because we think that a developer should be able to deploy their own code, so we don't have this silo that's called DevOps. We have something that runs all the way through, and I think taking that onto its next step, do you have these big directorates that are called IT, or do you have more blended resources throughout a call it process chain, even though we don't like the word process, to be able to support and design and do service design thinking, and actually deploy a prototype that may work all the way through. So from front office agent staff all the way through to taking off A/B type testing with customers to see what works, and then evolve your prototype, based upon validation.
So creating cross-functional teams as well.
Yeah,
to share that knowledge
just not having
insight.
not having silos. What good is it, to have this big IT team if you can never get hold of the exact person you want, who's not built up a level of knowledge and experience in how that particular part of the customer contact centre is working. I think you're going to see a lot more of specialists and specialisation throughout that.
Okay, so any final comments on those points? I mean, looking at the time, I think maybe what we'll do is, again, just throw another curveball in there. Maybe we'll start at the end, and David, with yourself, how would you best summarise, the takeaway points that you think people should get from today and be looking to go back into their businesses to focus on?
Yes, just be open. Just be open. I mean, I think it's so exciting. I think the world that we live in today is just full of opportunity and excitement, and technology drives a huge amount of that, but so do people. Because ultimately, up until now, we've created technology that may well change. But I'm just so excited. I'm optimistic. I think it's a fantastic time, certainly, to be in this industry.
Yeah. Agreed. Natalie?
I think one of the things you said this morning was around innovate, transform, and improve. And you said, you put up 3 companies, and they all have made a massive contribution to the industry, regardless of whether they were innovating, transforming, or improving. And I think that's the key takeaway. To Dave's point, there is opportunity everywhere, and it doesn't have to be the latest innovation or the most transformative. It could just be a minor improvement that makes the world of a difference. But the opportunity is there, and it's for every organization. It's just so incredibly exciting, because now we can do the things that we dreamt about or talked about doing back in the 80s and 90s with business process re-engineering and the like. So it's really exciting.
Thank you. Dirk?
Yeah, I mean, I think the most important point is digital is a continuous improvement journey. So it's about getting better step by step, learning from failure, and seek feedback, but also self-reflect and look into what bits of your behavior are successful and which aren't, and unlearn those that aren't successful.
Okay, thank you. Alex?
I think for me it's for people to describe the problem they're having, not necessarily what they want to do. And because I think there's a number of different technologies and there's lots of ways of solving similar or the same problems, but if we don't actually understand the right problem in the first place, we're never going to have everybody will get what nobody wants.
So it comes back to that thing of understand the problem that you're trying to address, the improvement you're trying to deliver, the change that you need to support, or where the opportunity is to move the business forward. Don't be prescriptive about the technology. It's not about buying a product. It's actually about enabling business change and improvement.
Very much so.
Okay. Thank you very much. I think it's been a great, interesting conversation there. I've certainly enjoyed it, learnt a lot. Thank you everyone for who's still here, because I know there's probably traffic out there. And thank you for your time and interest today. And all that's left for me to say really is, shift happens. Britannic's here. Doesn't matter where you are, what you're doing. We've got a lot of experience, a lot of capability, not just internally, but through partners as well. And whether you are the innovator, the transformer, or the improver, as the enablers, Britannic's here to help. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay.